today about how we have solved or what you should focus on, how we have solved, and how we're how we're envisioning the future should look like. So, going forward, when we talk about you want to build a Web 2.5 or Web 3 application for the end consumer, what you have to actually do? You have to first focus on the UI and the packaging and how the entire application logic should look like. But under the hood, what it actually takes, you need to take care of the user onboarding and the wallets. You need to ensure the users are onboarded in a seamless way. You need to also come up with a crypto business logic, like how your business logic is connecting into the overall architecture of a crypto or economic security model. You have to also, once you have covered across how the business logic is going to utilize the crypto architecture, you need to come up with intents to payload. Like you have to actually come up with those bunch of transactions that have to be executed across bunch of chains to make it happen. After everything is done, it's still not the end. You have to basically orchestrate the entire architecture, make sure it goes through for the end user to just have a blue tick or something like a blue tick that the crypto transaction has gone through, for them to just get the end 32-byte transaction hash. And underlying the hood, you have all the smart contracts and blockchain where the innovation goes. We'll just go one by one, step by step, what it takes to actually build this out as of today, and at Okto, how it takes to basically build it using Okto. Starting with user onboarding and wallets. For you, the end consumer, the end application will have a Google sign-in, will have a phone, which has to be as Web2 as possible. For that, you need to come up with some sort of authorization mechanism. Again, worry about centralization risk and decentralization of how the authorization is happening. You need to come up with a wallet against that authorization. You can use Particle, you can use Web3 auth, you can use it in general to make it happen. Even after you have done that, you have to still ensure that a self-custodial architecture of things still resides there. You need to ensure the security of it. Once the user is onboarded, the next part is basically coming up with the business logic itself. Now, that's the tricky part. When anybody is trying to build a smart contract application, they come up with a fancy DEX, they come up with fancy AMM. But that's probably the only DeFi-centric application can exist. But when you go into SocialFi, when you go into GameFi, the applications and the token incentives are way different. In that sense, you need to actually come up with those sort of models about where you can use NFTs, where you can use tokens, where you can use DAOs to basically use in your day-to-day Web2 application and have some Web3 flavor to it. When it comes to it, there has to be, first you need to understand what you can use. Second, you need to write those contracts. Third, you need to ensure that you're able to interact and to ensure the security of those contracts, which is basically how the actual crypto part of the business logic will work through. Fine, we have the users, we have the wallets, we have the even business logic till now. What next? You need to actually interact with those things. You need to come up with the payloads, you need to ensure gas exists, you need to have the entire permission architecture to if you're using multiple wallets. And this is the most critical part. After doing all the operations so far, you need to basically orchestrate 5 transactions, 10 transactions as of today. Maybe with Avail, Nexus coming up, with tag layer coming up, maybe the units of transaction will reduce, but still there will be a need of having multiple transactions to go through. From 10 it can go to 5, but it may not become 1 because of the fragmentation of how adoption goes through. There will be not just one protocol ruling the entire world, there will be a bunch of protocols doing their own job. So there still has to be multiple transactions that has to go through. You need to, as an application developer, worry of those things. So, whatever we have talked about, it does not really seem like you're building something for the end user. You are just trying to do a lot of crypto things, and it is not really adding any value addition for the end user, because your focus of development, your focus of energy, of where you want to spend your funds is on doing a bunch of these things, rather than actually coming up with the awesome application and the business that you have to come up with. This is where basically we draw a line, where you should actually focus on and where you should use different technologies. Focus on the UI and the experience. Focus on your actual core business logic and the core value proposition. You may use existing smart contracts, maybe using existing template smart contracts, but if you are very advanced in terms of your Web2 journey of building a crypto application, you may use your own smart contracts in general. So that is where there is a shaded line, like you may use, you may not use. but you definitely need not worry about intent, user onboarding, and transaction orchestration, because these are the solved problems that exist. Multiple companies might have solved it in different flavors, but at Okto, what we have done is we have built a unified package to solve all those things as of today. Chain is the future. Okto SDK is what we have already solved in a chain abstracted fashion about all these three problems. Let's talk a bit more on this. So just coming back to our original diagram, right? Focus on the UI and the packaging. The blue blocks we will take care. There exists sort of a light blue block, which is the crypto basic logic. This is where we are basically, that's where the Okto chain sort of fits in. What we are basically saying is our platform solves for onboarding, orchestration, and in general creation of payload, but there is limited number of use cases that we can do. Like, we can't solve the entire world, we can't solve all the possible use cases that can possibly happen. And there are a bunch of great smart contract developers who are coming up with those crypto logics, and they're coming up with those crypto sort of interactions that can happen. This is where we basically enable Okto chain. A very deep technical architecture diagram. We basically, just to summarize, your yellow and the purple block is what Okto platform does as of today. Your user onboarding is sorted, your transaction orchestration is sorted. The one thing that we are basically talking about is the block hub. The block hub enables the smart contract developers to come up, write their own adapters, write the templatized version of different smart contract possibilities, be it NFT creation, be it reputation, be it identity, be it even an templatized AMM decks, or maybe your own version of how one should work. They can come up with those core logics, build the smart contract on the any chain that they want to build on, write an adapter of how to interact with it. Okto chain will enable the end use case developers, end people who are actually trying to use your tools, your smart contracts. They give them a web 2 like interface, give them an SDK like interface for them to interact with it. Now, when we talk about a lot of such things, there is always a centralization risk. There always exists a risk that why do I even want to trust a middleware chain? I can directly interact with the end blockchain, which is having its own validators and its own security. But this is where we are trying to build an orchestration layer which actually secures your adapters, which actually secures your wallets, and which actually secures your entire orchestration in general. How are we doing it? We are basically coming up with an on-chain and an off-chain based model. When we talk, why we have actually come up with this architecture is purely because of technical limitation. Think about it. In the last talk that we talked about, a whale, like you have to buy an NFT on OpenSea. You need to make a transaction from zk sync to NFT to OpenSea, wait for the things to go, wait for your asset to be bridged, and then only you will be able to buy that NFT on the OpenSea. So there still exists a delay, there still exists different intent that you have to fire on different chains, and then wait for all of them to happen for you to actually do your original task. This itself is called asynchronous nature of compute. You will have asynchronous nature of compute the moment you have multiple points of interaction. Asynchronous compute is being solved hardly by any of the companies as of today. Agoric is doing an awesome job in doing the asynchronous compute, but it is still far from production. This is still far from actual adoption. How do we solve asynchronous compute as of today? We solve it using a chain and an oracle based architecture. The chain acts as a central point of ledger, central point of interaction, central point of validator. The off-chain actors are stateless nodes which are responsible for creating a set of proof of orchestration, which means they will be creating a ZK proof of they have run the right script. A ZK proof of write, yes, the script has actually executed the exact heap state that they wanted to do. Along with that, they will be also submitting a list of transaction hashes and the intent that was fulfilled by the nature. Once all of this is submitted to the Okto chain, the validators will verify whether the things have gone through or not. How do we are tying up in a crypto economic incentive model? We are basically saying the transaction network will have to stake enough money. They have to stake more money than the job they will be taking up with. So even if they do any sort of penalty, if they do any malicious activity of not doing the actual transaction, the penalization rate, the amount of money they will penalize will be allowed for us to repay the end user about whatever the financial loss they have suffered through. We When we talk about all this thing, when we talk about asynchronous compute, when we talk about orchestrating the transactions, there will be a nature where we have to sign those transactions without user being actually online. We can't say 10 transactions to the end MetaMask of the user saying that please sign 10 transactions, wait for 5 minutes. The UX will be just broken. That is where we are coming up with decentralized wallet networks, meaning the delegated permissions of funds, the private key with your exact funds will decide, will be hosted on top of ABS nodes. These are permissionless set of wallet actors which will be verifying whether a transaction is correct, whether the transaction actor is correct, whether the user has given some timed out permissions to execute transaction or not, using the ledger and the ABS compute. With this three-party system, which is a chain orchestration layer which works on ZK compute and a wallet network which works on decentralized permissionless restaking approach of verifying whether things are correct or not, we tie up a asynchronous compute version as of today. Going forward, in the next couple of years, we actually want to bring all of them together into a unified L1 and have a proper asynchronous VM up and running. But till then, we don't want to stop the mass adoption of crypto use cases. That is where with Okto SDK, with Okto Chain, and in future in Okto L1, we want to solve all these problems step by step. So, coming back to the green block, how does Okto solve for crypto business logic as of today? The blocks, the so-called adapters where people can write democratized use cases, we have already enabled such of them, and we already have clients which is Okto app, Coin-D6 app, and bunch of GameFi apps which are already using those blocks. And these blocks are written by our internal team, but they are written in a templatized way that even an external developer coming in few months will be able to write it down. Good. Any questions so far? Awesome.
Thank you so much, Asad. Great. That brings an end to the speaking sessions of the event. Thank you so much for staying this time. Really appreciate it. Dinner is served. Please grab a pizza, get some coke. Thank you so much. And obviously, people will be around for the next. We have the flow for the next 30 to 25 to 30 minutes.